Hello and welcome to the Mini Book Podcast, African American Books Edition. I am so excited to be here with you today.
It is wonderful to be here.
Today we are going to be talking about a truly incredible piece of work, How the Word is Passed, a reckoning with the history of slavery across America by the author Clint Smith.
And before we get started, we want to thank you for listening, and please consider subscribing for future content.
Absolutely. And just a quick disclaimer before we jump in. The voices you're hearing are generated by AI, but all the content, that comes straight from the book.
And we feel that this is a great way to learn about African American history.
We really do. And after listening to this, we would encourage you to go out and purchase this book and support the author. It's so important.
It really is.
So let's get into it. You know, when we think about history, especially the kind we learned in school, it feels static, like a bunch of dates and names in a textbook.
Right, like it's all settled, a done deal.
Exactly. But Clint Smith just flips that whole idea on its head. He argues that history isn't a static thing at all. It's actually a battle over memory.
It's about how we remember things. Or, maybe more importantly, how we choose to forget.
Yes. And to explore that, he goes on this journey. He travels to 8 different places. We're talking plantations, prisons, cemeteries.
All to see how the story of slavery is being told right now, on the ground. He's really trying to separate history, what actually happened, from nostalgia, that sort of rosy, feel-good fantasy we sometimes prefer.
And that gap between the two can be huge. Let's start where he starts. Monticello.
Thomas Jefferson's home. Probably one of the most complicated places in America.
For sure. I mean, you have this beautiful home. It's up on a mountain. It's an architectural marvel. And it belonged to the man who wrote, "All men are created equal."
While enslaving over 600 people in his lifetime.
600. That's the core contradiction right there.
It is, and Smith shows us how the tour guides there are starting to grapple with this. He talks about a guide named David Thorson, who doesn't shy away from it. He forces visitors to confront that paradox.
There's a quote from David in the book that really stood out. He says, "Slavery is an institution. In Jefferson's lifetime, it becomes a system."
And that distinction is so critical. We're not just talking about forced labor. We're talking about a very specific thing. Chattel slavery.
Right. And maybe we should break that down for a second. What does chattel actually mean here?
It means that a person is legally defined as property. Movable property, like cattle, which is where the word comes from.
So not just that you have to work for free. It's that you can be bought, sold, mortgaged.
Inherited. Your entire humanity is legally erased. You are an asset on a ledger. And that's the system Jefferson helped build.
And to make that real, Smith tells just this gut-wrenching story about the nailery on the plantation.
The nail factory, yeah.
Oh,
Run by enslaved boys.
He focuses on one teenager, an enslaved boy named Carey. And in this really high-pressure environment, he gets into a fight with another boy, Brown Colbert, and hits him with a hammer.
A terrible act, for sure. But these are kids in an unimaginably brutal situation.
Exactly. But it's Jefferson's response that's so chilling. He doesn't just, whip him on the spot. He's cold. He's calculated. He decides to sell him.
And not just sell him anywhere.
No. His specific order is to sell him so far he'll never be heard from again.
And that's the terror, isn't it? It wasn't just physical violence. It was the constant threat of family separation. The idea that at any moment, for any reason, your entire world, everyone you love, could be erased.
Smith profiles these 2 visitors on the tour, Donna and Grace. They call themselves history buffs. They'd been to Monticello before.
But they had no idea.
None. No idea he enslaved that many people. No idea he separated families.
Yeah.
And Grace just had this moment where she says, "Jefferson is not the man I thought he was." You can feel the idol crumbling.
And that's the reckoning the book is about. Moving from the myth to the man in all his complexity.
So from Monticello, which is trying to tell a more complete story, Smith takes us to a place that feels completely different. The Whitney Plantation in Louisiana.
Oh, completely different. The Whitney's focus is entirely on the lives of the enslaved people. If Monticello is the view from the top of the mountain, the Whitney is the view from the bottom.
The imagery he describes it's haunting. He talks about an exhibit called Heads on Stakes.
Yeah. That depicts the aftermath of the 1811 German Coast Uprising.
Which was the largest slave revolt in U.S. history, something we definitely did not learn about in school.
Not at all. And after the revolt was crushed, the white militias, they didn't just kill the rebels. They beheaded nearly 100 black men and put their heads on poles along the river.
A message.
A terrifying message. And the museum recreates that. You have to walk past it. There's no looking away. The guide there, Yvonne Holden, she calls the whole place an open book up under the sky.
And she focuses on something that's often erased, the experience of enslaved women and children, and specifically the concept of breeding.
Which is a horrifying word, but we have to understand the economics of it. See, in 1808, the U.S. banned the transatlantic slave trade.
So you couldn't legally import enslaved people from Africa anymore.
Correct. The international supply was cut off, but the demand for labor for cotton was skyrocketing. So the system turned inward. The domestic population was forced to reproduce to create the next generation of laborers.
It turned a woman's body into a tool for generating capital.
Exactly. It created a domestic slave trade, fueled by forced reproduction. That is the reality the Whitney refuses to hide.
It just completely dismantles that romantic Gone with the Wind idea of the South.
Ah.
But, there's this tendency to think of slavery as just a Southern problem.
The classic South was bad, North was good narrative.
And Smith takes a sledgehammer to that when he goes to New York City.
This is maybe the most shocking part of the book for many people. He joins a walking tour, and the guide, Damaris, points to a spot and says that in 1711, a slave market was established right there on Wall Street.
On Wall Street.
New York City had the second largest slave market in the country, second only to Charleston.
That's staggering. But it wasn't just the market itself, was it? The money, the banks, they were all tied up in it.
Deeply. Predecessors to banks we know today, like Citibank and Bank of America, they would accept enslaved people as collateral for loans.
Okay, explain what that means in this context, collateral.
It's what you pledge to a bank to secure a loan. If you can't pay it back, they take the collateral. So plantation owners would go to New York banks and say, give me a loan to buy more land, and I'll list these 20 human beings as my guarantee.
So the wealth of the North, the skyscrapers of New York, were financed by the bodies of enslaved people in the South.
The economies were completely intertwined. There was no clean North.
And the history is literally buried. He talks about Seneca Village.
Right, in what is now Central Park.
Before it was a park, it was a thriving community of free black landowners. They had homes, churches, a school.
A real symbol of progress and stability. And the city used eminent domain, declared they needed the land, and just bulldozed it, wiped it off the map to build a park.
The history is literally paved over.
Which is a perfect pivot to places where history isn't just paved over, but actively rewritten, like Blandford Cemetery in Virginia.
A cemetery for 30,000 Confederate soldiers. He describes it as beautiful, peaceful. There's a church with these stunning Tiffany stained glass windows.
But the windows don't depict saints. They depict Confederate soldiers. They're memorials to the Confederacy.
This is the birthplace of what's called the Lost Cause.
Yes. The Lost Cause is basically this pseudo-historical narrative that was created after the Civil War to reframe what happened.
To make it more palatable.
Exactly. The story goes that the war wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. That the enslaved people were happy and well cared for. It's a myth designed to justify the Confederacy and maintain white supremacy.
And Smith talks to a man there, Jeff, a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
And Jeff tells him, straight up, the war was not about slavery. He calls it the War of Northern Aggression.
He's living inside that Lost Cause narrative.
Because the alternative is admitting his ancestors fought for a monstrous cause. The myth protects him. But that myth has consequences that stretch right into today. Which brings us to Angola Prison.
The Louisiana State Penitentiary. The visual he paints is just, it's surreal.
It's an 18,000-acre prison that used to be a plantation. It's even named Angola after the part of Africa where the original enslaved people came from.
And he sees these rows of men, almost all of them black, picking crops in the fields. And watching them are guards, mostly white, on horseback, holding rifles.
It could be a photo from 1850. The visual line is unbroken.
And when he asks the prison's tour guide about it, the guide gets defensive. He says, I can't change what happened here, trying to draw a line between the past and present.
But there is no line. You have to look at the 13th Amendment. We're taught it abolished slavery, full stop.
But there's a loophole, a huge one.
A loophole big enough to drive a prison bus through. It says slavery is abolished except as punishment for a crime.
Except that one word.
That one word changed everything. Southern states passed racist laws called black codes that criminalized things like unemployment or just standing around.
So they could arrest newly freed black men for loitering.
And then, as convicted criminals, force them back into labor under the 13th Amendment. Angola isn't a metaphor for slavery. It's a direct continuation of it. It's the line from the plantation to mass incarceration.
Wow. It's so heavy. But the book doesn't end there. For the last section, he takes us somewhere with a very different feeling, to Galveston, Texas.
To a Juneteenth celebration.
Yes. It's joyous, there's music, food, community. But even inside this celebration of freedom, there's a complicated history.
Right. We celebrate June 19th, 1865. That's the day General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston and announced that the enslaved people were free.
But the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863.
2 years earlier. For 2 full years, people in Texas were legally free, but they were kept in bondage because the word and the enforcement hadn't arrived.
And he adds this one detail that is just infuriating. Even after the announcement, some enslavers made the people they enslaved work through one last harvest before telling them they were free.
They stole one last season of labor. It just shows that freedom isn't a light switch. It wasn't given. It had to be taken and enforced. As some students Smith meets say, slavery did not end cleanly or on a single day.
That feels like the core message of the whole book. We want history to be neat and tidy, but it's not.
Not at all. And what Smith is saying is that we're all, as he puts it, patchworks of the stories we've been told. We live inside these stories.
And we have a choice. We can stick with the comfortable nostalgia, the easy version that says it was a long time ago.
Or we can choose the actual history, the messy, painful, complicated truth. Because if you don't understand how this history shaped our country, from our economy to our prisons, you can't understand the world you're living in right now.
Which leaves us with the final challenge he puts forward. He writes, at some point, it is no longer a question of whether we can learn this history, but whether we have the collective will to reckon with it.
Do we have the will? That really is the question for all of us.
Thank you for listening to this episode.
Please go out and purchase How the Word is Passed to support Clint Smith. It is a book that will change how you see the world around you.
Please subscribe and tell others about this podcast. We really appreciate your support.
And drop a suggestion in the comments for books you would like to hear in future episodes.
Thank you for subscribing and listening. We'll catch you next time.